There's a few different kinds of fasting that you can do, and they all have different benefits for different use cases. And yeah, I know I'm making your head spin with all the different kinds of things that you can do. And let me just be very real. Fasting is fasting. We don't need to overcomplicate it, but there are kind of cool mechanisms that you can leverage if you do want to explore fun different types of fasting. So I'm going to share with you 5, in a way, kind of 6 different things that you can leverage and have some fun with, different ways to fast, right? So let's just jump right into it. So first one is one that I haven't talked about in years, but it's kind of making a comeback. And that's going to be an FMD or MCT fast. And what does that really mean and what do we get out of it? Who's it for? Well, MCT is MCT oil, and MCT oil fasting used to be kind of a thing. And it used to be something that people would do to kind of get their ketone levels elevated a little bit more, maybe get a little bit more energy during a fast. And then we started to see the research really come out from Dr. Walter Longo on what is called a fasting mimicking diet, which is essentially where you go very high fat, really low protein, and it's not really fasting, but it's fasting mimicking because you're elevating ketones, you're getting similar effects to fasting from an autophagy standpoint and from sort of a just a cellular and stem cell standpoint, but it's not the best for fat loss. It's just not what it's known for. Okay, so this is really good for people that are maybe just trying to get the effects of a fast, but without going into an extreme deficit. Now, I'm not suggesting that it works better than a fast. I know some people out there will say it does. It's basically extreme protein restriction with high fat. Now, you could do this with just MCT oil if your stomach could handle it. Are there benefits? I mean, there certainly are. Okay, like I guess you could take me, for example. I used to be 300 pounds. I lost 100 pounds. If I were to just continually do a lot of fasting, it would be hard for me to maintain muscle mass. I still do it anyway. I find a way to do it, but it takes work, right? But if I were to fast a lot or do prolonged fasting, it may not be the best thing for me. So for me, I still like the cellular benefits I get from fasting. And Dr. Walter Longo has made this very evident in his work, right? So for me, I do occasional fat fasts or MCT oil fasts. And that's just where I am still trying to get the telomere benefit, the autophagy benefit, and some of the potential longevity benefit, but without putting myself into this extreme deficit where I'm trying to necessarily lose fat. So it's not a fat loss oriented fast, but it's really good to do maybe 2 or 3 days of a fast like this, where you just eat things like macadamia nuts, or better yet, just MCT oil if your stomach can handle it. It's a way to, again, give yourself a little more energy, a little more fuel during a fast. With fat fasting, you're still consuming water. You can still consume coffee, consume tea, consume electrolytes. You can have all those normal things that you would have during a water fast. You're just adding fats into the equation. So it's not like you're restricting water, restricting fluids. You're just adding fats in, and you're keeping fiber kind of low in some ways, even though like fasting mimicking diet has moderately high fiber. My idea of a fat fast is keeping it focused on the fat. So you can drive up ketones, which does help your brain feel pretty good too. So it's also good if you're just looking for a cognitive boost, but not actually fasting. Again, I think it's important to have electrolytes while you're doing this kind of fast too, because insulin levels are so low, you're going to excrete a lot of water. My go-to fasting electrolytes have been for the last 6-7 years, LMNT, and I prefer the sparkling drinks now. They're really, really good. It feels like I'm drinking a soda, but it's sweetened with stevia, so I'm not getting the garbage, I'm not getting any sugar. 1,000 milligrams sodium, 200 potassium, 60 magnesium. Really good formulation, especially in that ready-to-drink can. That link down below gets you a free sample variety pack, so you can give some to a friend, you can keep them all for yourself. I kind of like it because I can just share them with my neighbors and things like that and give them to people that want to try fasting and say, hey, try this stick pack. Anyway, that link down below gets you a free sample variety pack. Definitely recommend you check them out if you're fasting. Now we're gonna go the other way. And the reason I'm doing this video now is because people are asking, what are different kinds of fasting? I'm hearing people talk about the sugar fast. What is that? Okay, we should back up for a second. Sugar fasting is a real thing, okay? But it's not just about eating Sour Patch Kids and candy like some people are putting out there on social media right now. I'm very close friends with Mark Bell, and I know he's having fun talking about eating all kinds of candy on a sugar fast. Reality is, my mom was doing sugar fasts when I was a kid. I remember that. I remember her doing juice fasts. She would squeeze her own juice. She would drink orange juice and lemon juice and all kinds of fruit juices, have a bunch of carbs and very little fiber and very little protein, if any. This has been around a while. It just goes through these different names, okay? So let me just kind of recap what it's about and why it's a thing. And this doesn't mean that I do it. I have done a sugar fast. I've definitely done them before. It's a real thing. I just don't know if it's, I don't know, right now it's catching a big boom. It's not for everybody. If you look online, you'll find people that are doing a sugar fast are consuming 500, 600, 1,000 grams of sugar or carbohydrates. Some of them say, I'm getting shredded, I feel amazing, I have high energy. And some people will be like, it broke me. I don't know if we have a reason or a phenotype of who would respond well or who wouldn't, because Ray Peat has even done work in the past, like high carb can help some people, not all, with insulin resistance, as long as fats are really low. Then on the other side, you have people that if they have carbs, it really messes them up. Which one are you? Let me know down in the comment section below. I actually am very curious. Are you someone that when you have carbs, you thrive? Or are you someone that when you have carbs, you kind of fall on your face? I'm actually genuinely curious. I want to kind of sort through these comments and see like if anyone's tried this and like how they responded to it. But anyway, there's a reason behind what happens. I'll keep it brief. There's something called FGF21 and it elevates after any prolonged fast. Evidently, according to the research, if you have sugar or fruit juice or anything with very low fat and very low, practically non-existent protein, it elevates this FGF21 compound in your body, which can increase the metabolic rate and it can increase thermic heat expenditure, and you can actually burn a lot of fat. But a lot of people are doing it because of, in some ways, hear me out on this because I'm not defending it, I'm just spewing out the facts with it. When you sort of force the cell to adapt to glucose because it has no other sources of fuel, it can start to actually regulate how to use it again. So in people that are insulin resistant, there's some evidence that, hey, if you drop fats to the floor, protein to the floor, the cell is eventually going to figure out how to use glucose. Clearly, we see in type 1 diabetics that doesn't work, right? In type 1 diabetics, that would kill them, right? And in type 1 diabetics, like they can't use that fuel. So there's elements of advanced insulin resistance where you're starting to literally go to the point where you're so pathologically insulin resistant that even if you crammed sugar down your face, it wouldn't work, right? But I'm going on too long. Bottom line is that if you wanted to do this, it is effective for some people and it's a real thing and I have to give credit where credit's due. It's not the fad that people are making it out to be. You'd drop your fats to the floor, drop your protein to the floor, and you'd go 24, 48 hours or your time of choice with very high carbohydrate, sucrose, fruit, things like that. When you come back onto regular food, breaking that fast, you'd want to keep it with lean protein and some starch. You are not going to break down fats as well as you might think you will. You need to give it a little time and ramp the fats up slowly. Don't go eating a cheeseburger, okay? The next type of fasting that's important to note, that's kind of making a bit of a comeback, is bone broth fasting, which was kind of my indoctrination into fasting in the first place. I have been plagued with gut and digestive issues, irritable bowel syndrome for my entire life. And it was bone broth fasting that first taught me that I maybe had some control over this. So bone broth fasting is just like the name implies. It's where you are doing nothing but drinking water and bone broth. You could add collagen into the mix. You could do sort of a collagen fast if you wanted to, because that's really what we're after. You see, we have a decrease in our gut mucosal layer when we fast, right? It actually degrades the gut mucosal layer and then it rebuilds after we break our fast. But if you add bone broth into the mix, you're actually adding a layer of gelatin and collagen that supports that gut mucosal layer. So at the same time, your gut is regenerating, which is usually happening during a fast. You are also providing gut mucosal layer support. So you're kind of giving yourself the best of both worlds. Because normally when you fast, you break down your gut layer and you don't have anything in there to help support it. So the moment you bring food back in some ways, you kind of go back to square one. With bone broth fasting, you're giving a layer of protection on the gut, which is in the gut, which is gonna make it so that when you do break your fast, you don't damage the gut as much. So you might be wondering, well, why doesn't everyone just bone broth fast? Well, because I mean, basically if fasting is gonna wreck your gut when you eat food again, why wouldn't we just bone broth fast? Well, because bone broth fast does technically break a fast. Like you're having bone broth, it breaks your fast. So the metabolic impact is not as strong. It's very gut centric. But the whole idea with this is to have some fun with it. I'm not giving you these ideas to say one is better than the other. Get creative, have fun. Like we should be experimenting and having some fun with this, right? So try a sugar fast if you want to. Do a fat fast or FMD fast. Definitely try a bone broth fast. Be like, I'm doing this for this reason. At the very least, you might placebo affect yourself into something cool. With bone broth fasting, I don't recommend doing more than like a 48-hour fast. The thing is the small amount of amino acids that are coming in are gonna make you hungry. I find it easier to just flat out fast than it is to do a bone broth fast. Because once you're consuming something salty and savory and you have the proteins coming in, it makes you want to eat. So it's hard to continue on. And there's evidence that maybe like because you're not so protein spared, you might actually start to break down tissue after a while. So keep it short. Next up is the best fat burning one by far, protein sparing modified fasting. Very legit in the scientific literature, also known as rabbit starvation, which is very strange, but makes it sound like I don't want to do it. But it's where you go very low fat, pretty much no fat, no carb, and you go like chicken breast. It's pretty much pure lean protein. So we've gone through every macronutrient in terms of fasting, right? So now we have protein sparing modified fast, which is where you drop your fats and your carbs to the floor and you're left with just lean protein. Arguably the fastest way to get shredded, okay? I mean, it gets you crazy shredded, but your calories end up so low, you do not want to do this for more than a couple days at a time. So 2 days of protein sparing modified fasting, you're keeping your protein intake as high as you can get it with lean protein and trying to keep fats as close to zero as you can. When you think of it as a form of fasting, it doesn't sound so bad, right? Because a lot of people in the fasting community, they're like, low fat is bad. Well, you're very low fat when you're fasting. A lot of people that like the low carb stuff also like fasting. And when you're fasting, you're eating no fat. So in this case, what you're doing is you're eating no fat, but you're just having protein in the equation. So consider it like protein fasting, where you're just having nothing but protein, right? Okay. Now you couple that with periods of protein restriction, you can actually have a nice sort of alternating effect, but I did another video on that, save that for another day, or I can link out to it down in the description about where you temporarily reduce protein to try to increase your protein sensitivity. So in essence, like a couple days a week, you can actually drop your protein low and it might actually increase the anabolic rebound. So when you do have protein, it has a stronger effect. That's a little more advanced, save that for another day. The next one is one that is extreme, and I just encourage people to exercise caution with this and do it for short periods of time. That is good old-fashioned dry fasting, but it's been making a bit of a comeback. Okay, now dry fasting is what they do with Ramadan. Okay, so this isn't anything insanely extreme. Where it becomes more extreme is with the stuff like Dr. Sergey Filanov was doing, where he was having people go for weeks without water or food. Okay, dry fasting is something that has been around for a while and you don't need to do crazy amounts of it. So full disclosure and disclaimer, like I've done a couple dry fasts in my life. They are effective. I don't know if the juice is always worth the squeeze, okay? I think that there are some serious things that can happen when you're dehydrated. Like obviously I talk about electrolytes all the time. We live in a time where I think cellular hydration is important, but I mention this because I think it's still worth understanding for even short periods of time. When you go without water, your fat cells actually release hydrogen and it combines with oxygen that you breathe and you actually create molecular water. Okay, it's called H2O, hydrogen, oxygen, right? You create molecular water from your fat tissue, releasing hydrogens as they burn. Combines with the oxygen you breathe, creates H2O. So you actually hydrate by accelerated fat burning. So yes, the speculation, the anecdote is about 1 day of dry fasting is equal to about 3 days of regular fasting. I don't think that people should be pushing it that far, but I give you this information because I think, again, short periods have some effect. And I also mention this to say that I think our ancestors went long periods of time without water because they didn't always have access to water. So just keep that in mind, play with it, but at the very least, maybe do some short stints with it, but be smart. And I think realistically, water fasting is probably a better way to go for most people, unless you have an ability to be supervised or you're very experienced. The last thing I'll mention is just one little bonus one. And it's just a regular water fast, but with the addition of methylene blue. Now, I did a video on pairing methylene blue with fasting because I think there is a serious benefit there. But methylene blue with fasting is interesting because what happens, methylene blue actually aids in the mitochondrial function that we're looking to achieve with fasting. It allows electrons to actually pass through the various complexes in the mitochondria and get to the end result of producing ATP. So long story short, you have more energy during a fast and you can use more of your fuel during a fast. So I think there's a huge benefit there, but I'll leave it at that because I did a whole separate video on that, which I can link out to down below as well. As always, keep it locked in here. I'll see you tomorrow.